weeks.
Recording.
Thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. It is a couple minutes after 7 o'clock on Thursday the 3rd, and I'd like to welcome everybody to our town hall. That is for the Marsh Creek Morgan Territory area. However, that being said, anyone from our district or even from out of the area is more than welcome to join us here this evening. I know that we're scheduled from 7 to 8:30, but that being said, if there are plenty of questions that come in, we will hang on until we've answered those questions. That being said, my name is Brian Oftedal. I'm the president of East Contra Costa Fire Protection District, and I'm going to help start us off this evening and do some introductions and facilitate. And then I will be doing a handoff to Chief Helmick and others, as well as Susannah Williams, that will be helping to facilitate the question and answers. Before we get started, just going to go through a couple of items. We do have a chat feature that if you do have questions that you'd like to populate into that chat feature, we can start lining them up and getting them ready for the appropriate respondees this evening. And I know on my computer, I have a raise hand feature on the upper right corner of my iPad, as well as a chat box that's under 3 small dots that shows as more on my screen. You can virtually or physically raise your hand, so you could use that that box above, or physically, we do have folks that are monitoring the screens a bit if you do want to raise your hand a bit, but I would recommend that doing a handful of these so far has made it very easy for us when folks can type in the questions, and then we can start putting them in order and make sure that we get them all answered. We will be asking for everybody if you wouldn't mind muting yourself this evening, so we could try to limit the background noise. I believe our moderator will also be physically muting folks as well, just to try to help out with the any distractions or any background noise. Our speakers will be unmuted, but while you're not speaking, I would ask the speakers to keep themselves muted to try to eliminate any of the static that comes through or any of that background noise. That being said, we have changed our style a little bit. We had listened to some feedback. Some folks said early on in these town halls have had some struggles getting into some of our events. We were using Eventbrite, which was sending off a link, and I think there was enough folks that suggested that it was a little too challenging to get in, that we needed to make that easier, and we've done that, and we're hoping that this Zoom link was easy for folks to get into, so we could ensure that we've got as many participants as would like to be here this evening. That being said, this is being recorded, and it will be available on our website, www.eccfpd.org, as well as on our splash page, which is on the front of our website for future viewing. And I would ask that if you have friends or family that are in the area, I would ask after the event that you share this with them. Before we move along, since we are using a Zoom format, I need to conduct this a little bit like I would a board meeting. I need to at least call this meeting to order, and I need to do a roll call to see if any of my fellow directors are here with me this evening. Regina, if you're online, would you mind facilitating a quick roll call for us?
Of course, President Oftedal. Director Langro. Director Nash. President Oftedal.
I'm here.
Director Smith.
Here.
Director Young. President Oftedal, you do not have a quorum tonight, but the town hall meeting can commence. No board action will be taken.
Very nice. Thank you so much. This evening, we've also taken a little bit of a different approach. We have been out there listening, and we've heard a lot of concerns. We know that obviously our biggest issue out there was our recent fire that we had that caused a huge level of concern on not only the folks that are in the impact area, but the surrounding areas, and challenges for folks with not only individuals trying to evacuate, but folks trying to get individuals out with physical disabilities, folks having concerns with the warning systems and sheltering their animals, and a lot of other concerns. So we ended up ensuring that we had folks that could be here this evening that could speak directly to those concerns. So our talking points are going to be a little bit longer than we've done historically with these town halls. That being said, there will be plenty of time to ask questions after each of the topics and the speakers, and we definitely look forward to hearing any questions or concerns you have. I would like to do some introductions this evening. I would like to give Director Steve Smith an opportunity to say hello and introduce himself if he would like to.
I'm Steve Smith, one of the 5 elected directors. I'm glad that been able to now join in on these town halls. Up till now, we've had to hold back to have no more than 2 directors present. It's been very informative. I've been really glad to see. I see there's quite a few participants in this one, and I think that's all to the good. Thank you.
Nice, thank you, Vice President Smith. And next up, I'm gonna just do some brief introductions and then also do some mic checks at the same time, but I'd like to introduce Meredith Gerhardt with Contra Costa County Office of Emergency Services. She is a Senior Emergency Planning Coordinator. I also sit with her on the American Red Cross Leadership Council for Contra Costa County. We did have a meeting last week and talked about these recent fires, and that's where we connected, and she was more than willing to join us this evening. So I appreciate you being here, and would you like to say a couple of words before we get started so we could do a quick mic check at the same time?
No, just thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. I think it's great that you've got such an engaged community who's willing to take part in this kind of discussion.
Nice, thank you so much, and look forward to hearing from you shortly. Next up, Deputy Chief Mike Marcucci is here with us from CAL FIRE, and a lot of folks on the line are probably familiar with Chief Marcucci because he was dedicated to this area before his recent promotion. So appreciate you being here, Chief, and if we could do a quick mic check, and if you'd just like to say hello to everyone.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, President Oftall, for the introduction. Happy to be here and answer anything I can do to help support the community.
Nice, thank you so much for that, Chief. And then with Chief Marcucci this evening, we've got Battalion Chief Brian Gambroni from CAL FIRE as well, that I believe he actually took your role as you stepped out and promoted. And Chief Gambroni, would you mind doing a mic check and saying hello, please?
I don't. Hello, everybody from Florida. I just wanted to say I appreciate everybody taking the time, and I won't ever fill Chief Marcucci's shoes. Thanks.
Nice, thank you. I don't see the crashing waves behind you in the background. But yeah, thank you for being with us from that far off. Also like to do a quick invite for a couple of local community leaders. I'd like to welcome Susannah Thompson. Susannah Thompson is a resident of the Morgan Territory area, and I previously had the honor of working with her as an appointed board member. Prior to us becoming an elected board, that we were an appointed board of 9, and Susannah Thompson represented Contra Costa County, so the county in the unincorporated area. She was one of the 2. So thank you for being here, Susannah, and would you mind just popping on a couple words?
Oh, he's on Beth on.
He's been texting me.
I don't know if you're on if you're still muted, Susannah. Are we still showing Susannah on the call, and or are we able to unmute her?
I just sent her a request to unmute. There we go.
think we might
Okay.
have.
Well, thank you for having me, and much appreciation from the community to the district, not only for their response during the recent fire, but also for rescheduling and reformatting this meeting to accommodate the unique needs of this community.
Nice. Thank you so much, and appreciate you being here, and appreciate the feedback that you've brought back with to us, the direct feedback from the community. It did sound like there were several challenges, that there were still some folks without power. There were still some folks that had challenges with cell phone connectivity. And I don't know if that's 100% been mitigated at this point, but we can always come back if at a later time if there is a need. And I'm happy that we are recording this, so this will be available for folks that didn't have the opportunity to be here this evening with us. But thank you again for being with us, Susannah. And then Tamara Steiner, who is the publisher and editor of The Pioneer, is here with us. Mind saying a quick hello and maybe a couple of words if you would?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming and thank you for listening. And a special thanks to East County Fire for reformatting the meeting and being so willing to address some of the big questions that came up during the Deer fire. We had questions about communication and evacuation, and really appreciate the attention paid to that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, and we're hoping that some of those, like I said, some of those questions that we've already received, I think we do have a good set of speakers that are here this evening that are, I would like to say, subject matter experts on the issues that have been brought forward. And I think that, you know, the folks are here willing to take the tough and challenging questions. You know, we do know that this is a very diverse community, and we do have our own very different set of challenges out here. You know, not only the reduction in the workforce, you know, obviously we should have additional firehouses, more firefighters, more fire stations. We know we're challenged with that, but we also know that Marsh Creek and Morgan Territory, very challenging. Access, egress, folks' property lines, water supply. There are so many different communication challenges, just the warning system and so forth. So I'm hoping that we can get into those and really be able to answer the questions that are out there. So don't hold back if you've we're looking for that constructive criticism. And you know, I think we've got a lot of adults on here that can take the tough, challenging questions. So feel free to bring them on.
Thank you, Brian.
Without further ado, I'd like to, maybe I'll just back up a step. Before I do the introduction of Chief Helmick, he does have his right-hand man with him this evening. Fire Marshal Steve Aubert is here. Mind saying a couple of words real quick, Steve, so we can do a mic check with you?
Yes, thank you, President. Steve Aubert, Fire Marshal, PIO. Opportunity to present tonight. Thank you all for coming and participating.
Nice, thank you, Fire Marshal Aubert. And it was a little bit choppy for me for a second, so I'm not sure if you have the ability to move closer to a pod or or give your device priority, but just wanted to give you that feedback real quick. But hopefully maybe it'll figure itself out. But without further ado, I would like to introduce your fire chief, Chief Brian Helmick, this evening. And Chief Helmick has been facilitating a ton of these events. We are going out to every community in our district. And as I just mentioned, we've actually even done a part 2 for Bethel Island because of those challenges and the feedback that we had, folks having difficulty getting on and folks that really wanted to be there and ask questions. So we just actually facilitated that part 2 last night. And Chief Helmick has been taking tough questions. I think he, and he's doing a great job with it. I know that we have a lot to work on. You know, we know that we've got communication issues over the years. We've had some transparency issues over the years, and there's a lot of questions that are out there. We've moved from, as I said, an appointed to an elected board, and we are really moving. You know, maybe I can say that we weren't quite in the 21st century, and we should have been in the 21st century, and I think we're getting there. And I think it's really starting to become apparent in the different press releases and social media that's out there that with our transparency certification that we received from California Special Districts Association, and as the chief says, turning over every rock. I think we've been turning over a lot of rocks and finding a lot of really good things, but we do have a lot of challenges. We do have a lot of work in front of us, and we're up for the challenge. I know the chief and I are up for the challenge, and I know he's got a great team that's built that is for the challenge. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to you, Chief Helmet.
Thank you, President Oftedal, and I do also want to thank everyone for joining here tonight. What I'm going to do to get us started is I'm going to be sharing my screen, as I'll be running a presentation on here for all of the presenters prior to getting to a question and answer session at the end. So first of all, I just want to welcome all of you and thank you for the opportunity to be with you tonight. We have done about 5 or 6 of these over the last 8 weeks. I think it's also important to note that we are the East Contra Costa Fire Protection District. We do cover 250 square miles, which covers Brentwood, Oakley, Knightson, Bethel Island, Discovery Bay, Byron, Marsh Creek, and Morgan Territory. And I think it's really important to note that although we're doing these individual town hall meetings, the challenge that we really have, that we're really trying to change, is that we really want the citizens of our jurisdiction to know that every community is equally important to not only the fire board, but also my office and those that are responding to calls. There's not one community that's more important than another community. There's not one citizen that's more important than another citizen. And there's not one call or one incident that's more important than the other. I will tell you that when the calls come into our organization, it is the most important call at that time that's coming in, and we do the best we can to be able to mitigate it and address it. So I do really appreciate the opportunity to speak specifically to this area of our organization. And the reason being is, as we've gone around and why we did decide not just to do East Contra Costa Fire in general town hall meetings, and we decided to do very focused on communities, is because every community has its unique concerns and has its unique challenges. And it's important not only for the fire board, but also for my office to be able to demonstrate to you that we hear you. And to that further, to push that even further, is, as President Oftedal stated here tonight, is that the format that we have done, and I do recommend that folks go and they look and they see and they watch the other town hall meetings we have done, because I do believe that it is enlightening and there's a lot of valuable information in there for all of our residents. And you will learn about the district's challenges and the funding, and that's not what tonight is about. We decided, and I want to give, I actually want to give some pretty big kudos to Susannah Thompson and both Tamara too. Look, they have a very strong voice for your community, and we like to listen, obviously, to the community, and they got to us early on. And there's 2 things that we did. This meeting was actually scheduled for a later date. We were going to be doing this prior to the Deer Zone incident to be at a later date. The content was going to be very much catered towards, as it's been in other communities, the district's challenges, what we're doing to address them, and we were going to hit on some specific topics or issues unique to the Marsh Creek, Morgan Territory area. Due to the Deer Zone incident and listening to them and them really recommending, we really flipped the script, and we created a whole new script to be able to discuss with you tonight. And you're going to be seeing the list of topics on the screens, which we're going to work our way through tonight. And after each one of these topics, we'll be going through a question and answer session. But the thing I really want to stress is, listen, we want you to know that we sincerely do care about the service levels and the residents throughout our whole jurisdiction. And hopefully you'll be able to see here tonight that I feel that we have a good grasp on what we have is some opportunities, and we have some challenges to be able to improve. And we want to be able to start a conversation tonight. And I say this in every community that we go to throughout our jurisdiction, is I want to put a disclaimer on this. We are going to spend the next hour going through a presentation or a question and answer session. And I do not want to misconstrue that we will have all of the answers. Getting a little bit of feedback here, stand by. That we will get, that we'll answer all the questions and or resolve all of the challenges that we have, because there are things of which I know that we'll have to continue to work on. But I hope that you'll be able to see that you have cooperating agencies. We're coordinating with each other, we're cooperating with each other, and I think that we're very sensitive and aware of the things that we have an opportunity to improve. And I think there are some things that we are doing well, but we have a lot of room for improvement. So I'm actually really excited to meet with you, as I think that we've been able to advance a lot of things within the Marsh Creek Morgan Territory area. And hopefully today we'll be able to clarify some things. And we'll get to hear from you about how we can better serve and continue to serve the Marsh Creek and Morgan Territory area. So I do appreciate all of you being here again. I do apologize also in advance if we do run a little long tonight. We have a lot of topics that we want to cover. When I say it's we, we've already gone through the introductions, but we have representatives from OES, Fire, and the Fire District. As we are cooperating agencies, we work with each other. I believe that we work well with each other. We're always striving to improve, and there is opportunity to improve in what we do. And we're going to share with you our experiences in the Deer Zone incident, some things that went well, some things that didn't go as well, and opportunities for improvement as we move forward. And then we'll offer a question and answer session. So the topics tonight, and we're going to be jumping around. Everyone that is a presenter here tonight is going to be taking bite sizes of these parts. We'll be jumping around. But after each one of these topics, we're going to be starting and talking about the Deer Zone incident, about evacuation, all the way through the warnings, to the orders, all the way through repopulation. We'll go through some of the terminology and some of the challenges and some of the things that we do. And Meredith from OES is going to be starting off with that. Chief Jambroni, as the incident commander of the Deer Zone incident, is going to add on to it. Chief Albert was the public information officer that worked in cooperation with Chief Jambroni and OES for communications. He's going to share. And then we'll bring it back to Meredith to finish that topic, and we'll open it up to question and answers on anything we want clear on, and or anything anyone really wants to talk about. We'll address that. Meredith will also speak to large animal evacuations, not so much of what happened on the Deer Zone incident, but how can we and what do we need to be prepared for? What do the citizens need to be doing that have large animals? How do we want to prepare in regards to future incidents? And if you have any questions on previous incidents, we'd be happy to address them. Those two topics will be kind of handled together. And again, we'll do a Q&A, question and answer to address any questions there may be. I also want to spend some time to describe and explain the relationship between CAL FIRE and East Contra Costa Fire. It's going to be important for folks to understand who we are, who they are, how we cooperate with each other. I'm very aware that the residents within Marsh Creek and Morgan Territory see CAL FIRE as the first agency that arrives, the one that is in the forefront within their community, and we love that, as we have a very strong relationship with them. But as I'll describe later on, is we are the local response agency. They operate in a station within our jurisdiction, and we have a cooperative process to make sure that they're here year-round. And that's why we need to make sure that folks know that East Contra Costa Fire is our fire district, and we work with CAL FIRE to provide services, and we kind of we'll explain to you how that works, and then we'll address any questions you may have on that. I also want to hit on, as we're aware that there have been some concerns about ambulance response times or response times into the Morgan Territory area. I have pulled data from January 1 to date, and I'm going to give you some of the data that we have. There's 2 incidents of which I have found that may or may not be the ones of concern, but they had extended response times, and I can provide a little clarity as to why, and then we'll address questions on that. We're also working hand in hand with the Marsh Creek, the Morgan Territory Association, and we're working to establish the Marsh Creek and Morgan Territory, let's just say Marsh Creek and Morgan Territory Community Emergency Response Team, a CERT program. And we're going to be, I'll explain and explain how that's working. John Kwashabi, I think he's on the line here tonight. Pat Dugan, I want to thank both of them, as we've been working hand in hand with them for the past couple of months of trying to find better ways to work collaboratively with each other to address situations in the gap before we arrive and make sure that we do things not only legally, safely, and uniformly. And so I'll be able to introduce where we are on that topic, the plan as we move forward, and we'll address any questions on that also. We know, as we have heard, there's been some confusion, and I think the confusion has merit in regards to how we as a district have communicated vegetation hazard abatement. Fire Marshal Albert will speak to what we've been doing in the past, where we are, what our plans are as we move forward, what's happening in regards to our hazard abatement program, how are we addressing things within East Bay Regional Parks, the state parks. We sent out some postcards, and we want to make sure that people understand what it is we're doing and not doing, what they meant and what they don't mean. And SRA means state response area versus local response area. There's the opinion that we're doing things differently in both of those areas, and we want to explain as to why. And we want to make sure we clear the air and the record on how we're doing vegetation hazard abatement, and we will also address questions once we conclude there. The last topic we will hit is wildfire prevention tips. We want to provide you to very valuable information of how you can get prepared, be ready and be set and be ready to go if you need to go. So you can take these items and make sure that you are equipped and you have access to good information to make sure you, your families are prepared if a wildfire were to occur. And we hope that these topics here tonight, again, will begin the conversation, just to let you know that we are not only actively engaged on what's going on within your communities, but we believe that we have an opportunity to improve what we do, not only as your fire district, but working with you. So with that, I'm going to start the program. And I'm not going to go through the introductions again, but one thing I want to really stress is CAL FIRE, OES, and the fire district, we very much are partner agencies. We heavily rely upon each other. None of us individually can do what we need to do to serve not only all of East Contra Costa Fire, but also the Marsh Creek Morgan Territory area. And we have been working pre-Deer Zone incident, and we worked through the Deer Zone incident that turned into the SEU Lightning Complex. And we are now obviously working post and getting prepared for when, and we know it's not if, it's a matter of when the next incident occurs, and we are striving to improve. So you're introduced to the folks that are here. I personally appreciate, I have decades of opportunity to work with Chief Marcucci. I've learned a lot from him. He's a colleague, he's a friend. And obviously he is a good collaborator in what we're doing here. So all of us take very seriously serving your community well. And I know Chief Jambroni, Chief Albert, and Meredith feel the same. So we thank you for investing the time in us tonight. And we're going to get right into the first topic, which is going to be the Deer Zone incident. We're going to talk everything from not only the incident and when it occurred, all the way through the repopulation of the incident itself. So what we'll do is I'm going to start, and I do apologize because I am sharing my screen with you if it's blocking anything on the top of the screen, but I am going to start with Meredith, invite her to be able to communicate this topic, and then she will work in coordination with Chief Jambroni and Chief Albert, and they will work through a couple slides. I'll change it for them, and when we get to the end, we'd be more than happy to do a question and answer session on everything from incident to evacuation all the way through repopulation. So Meredith, the floor is yours.
Thank you for having me again. I'm a senior emergency planning coordinator at the Office of Emergency Services. I'm going to give a brief overview of the incident from the perspective of my office. We're going to talk a little bit about the evacuation process and share what we're learning and what we're working on, and talk about what you, the community, can do to help. I want to acknowledge that being asked to leave your home is scary and stressful and can be confusing and feel chaotic. And I also want to recognize that from the perspective of interagency coordination, this was a well-coordinated response. This was not chaos, nor was it confusing. This response really represented a significant improvement over past responses in the sense that agencies worked well together from the onset. And your law enforcement, your fire agencies were really there for your community throughout this incident, working with very limited resources. So I think with the understanding that we all have room for improvement, that's just a growth mindset. We also need to keep in perspective that no lives were lost and no structures were burned. And that's not the case for all of the fires that are happening right now around the region. So with that, you see on your screen kind of a rough overview. This really began on the 15th. The National Weather Service issued a red flag warning for the area. And then on Sunday morning, we woke up to what felt like a freak weather incident. There were rainbows and lightning and fires, because why not? It's 2020, right? 5 fires break out in Contra Costa County, East Contra Costa County around the same time. The Deer Zone is one of those fires. And I think, like I said, it's important to note that simultaneously throughout the region, there's 19 or 20 other lightning started fires. So from the onset, we're competing for limited resources. A command post is set up at Round Hill Staging, East Contra Costa Fire and CAL FIRE unifying command. And just before 8 a.m., the sheriff's office shows up. And these 3 agencies, like Chief Helmick said, commence working together. The fire behavior early in that morning, I can't speak to, maybe Jambroni or Aubert can, but what I can say was that an evacuation warning was issued by our community warning system around 10:30 a.m. We'll talk a little bit more about what a warning means and what the implications are in a minute. But for now, we'll just suffice to say that that warning was for parts of Morgan Territory Road close to Danville. And it was just keep your eyes open, get ready to evacuate. The firefight continues throughout the day. There's an additional evacuation warning issued for the same area, Morgan Territory Road near Danville, 8:45 or 9 p.m. that night. And that's followed rapidly by a change in fire behavior. That change in behavior leads to an order, an evacuation order. And that order is issued at 9:18, followed by another order for a close by area shortly after 10. So that order stands, that evacuation order stands throughout the night and isn't lifted until 3:30 or so, 3:17 on Wednesday. So still during that first night, temporary evacuation centers are set up in Clayton and Brentwood. When it became apparent that first night that the firefight was going to continue through the night, the Red Cross worked with EHSD to set up hotels for those residents that I just got some feedback. And they stayed there through, I think it was 28 hotel rooms, 2 different hotels, and those people stayed and received food and lodging through the Red Cross until Wednesday. So you can see on your screen the area that was posted on Contra Costa County Community Warning System's website, showing the entire region that was under an evacuation order Sunday night through Wednesday afternoon. If you want to go ahead to the next slide. Thank you. We just wanted to talk a little bit about evacuations. This is a hot topic throughout the state. I'm not going to talk too much about what happens on the fire and the law side, except to say that this is a coordinated effort. Fire recommends an evacuation based on their understanding of fire behavior and trying to anticipate the risk to life and property. Fire coordinates with law enforcement in the command post to come up with the best area to evacuate and where they should evacuate to, which is why it's so significant and important that our law enforcement is in the incident command post early. Law enforcement are the agencies by state law that are capable of requesting an evacuation. And they reach out like they did on Sunday morning and again on Sunday afternoon and evening to the community warning system. And they request a message to be sent out. CWS sends that message out in the area that's specified by the incident commander. So if you're in that area, you receive a warning or an order if your household is registered to receive CWS alerts and it's in the area that's being evacuated. The terminology that we use, evacuation warning or order, or you'll see prepare to evacuate or leave now. The language has changed a little bit in the past several years. At the end of the day, if law enforcement tells you that you need to evacuate, you need to evacuate. They can't by law force you to leave your property or leave your residence, but you can be prevented from coming back in. And if you choose not to evacuate, you should do that with the understanding that staying could get in the way of ongoing response efforts, and it could cost you your life. Hard and soft road closures we'll talk a little bit more about on the next slide. And then there are other considerations. These are things like animal evacuations, where to go, what to do. Our county Animal Services Department is the agency that's responsible in Contra Costa for evacuations. Having said that, planning for animals in an emergency is really the responsibility of every animal owner. You cannot plan to receive assistance transporting your animals or sheltering your animals in the event that you have to evacuate. Okay, I know that's not a popular message, but it's something that we all need to be clear on, because the Antioch Fairgrounds is no longer a suitable evacuation shelter. Hold Your Horses, I know, has been working with people out in your area. And that's, I'm not going to say much more about animal evacuations other than it being the responsibility of animal owners, and also a consideration that you should take into account if your household receives a warning. Because if I had to catch all of my animals and evacuate, that warning to me is going to act like an order. In a similar way, we talk to people who have disabilities or who have access and functional needs, or who just take a really long time to do things. If I had to evacuate my household right now, the number of stuffed animals that I would have to collect and get into my car to evacuate, that's like a 30-40 minute process. So a warning to me is an order. That's my cue to start moving, because I know how long it takes. And you all know as individuals how long your household takes to evacuate. So I really want to empower people, not even to wait for the warning or the order, but if you feel in danger, if you smell smoke and see flames and really feel like you might be at risk, I want to empower everyone to go. Beginning probably before 2017, but in 2017, those dispatch logs where the people in Sonoma called into dispatch and were saying, you know, I see flames, what should I do? You don't need to trouble dispatch with that call. You should go. The final step in evacuation is repopulation. And this is the slow, complicated process of bringing people safely back to an area that's been closed. We'll talk a little bit more about that, because it did feel like it took a really long time, and we'll try and explain a little bit about why that is when we get there. So Chief, I think if you go to the next slide, it's terminology. We're not going to spend too long here. These are some of the terms that we talked about with respect to evacuation. These terms are included with the county Community Guide to Evacuation and Wildfire Preparedness, and you can find that guide on, I think, East County Fire's website. You can find it on Contra Costa Community Warning System's website. It's on ConFire's website. And this language is consistent. It's an overview, and it explains what to expect. The final point about evacuation warning, order, mandatory, voluntary that I wanted to really hit on is that sometimes you get a warning and you don't get an order, like what we saw with Morgan Territory Road near Danville. Sometimes you get an order and no warning. You can't expect one to cue you into the next, which really comes back to empowering people to act when they feel in danger, and when told to evacuate, assume that the incident commander has understanding of the fire and the area that you may not have, and listen to them. I will say that the majority of residents in the evacuation zone chose not to evacuate, which is, I think, expected. I think that is usually the case. But we did have deputies going door to door throughout the area, and we have a dispatch log showing who evacuated and who chose to stay. And based on that log, I think we can say that the community can continue to have a conversation with us, with our agencies, about the importance of leaving when law enforcement tells you that your life or property may be at risk. and that staying with your property may put you and responders at risk. Let's go ahead to the next slide. I think this is for efficiency. I've grouped some of these issues that arose. I'm going to say if you have specific questions for the community warning system after this, we do have a representative on with us who can speak to those. If you have specific questions about animal evacuations, I'm going to ask that you reach out to the County Animal Services Department. Why didn't I receive a warning? Lorena can pitch in if I get this wrong, but to my understanding, sometimes there isn't time for a warning. You may not have been registered with the community warning system, and we'll provide that information how to register later. Or you weren't in the zone that was evacuated. So not just next to the zone, but outside, not down the street from the zone, but actually a residence that was being evacuated. Those were the people who received warnings and orders. With respect to mixed messaging about warnings, orders, mandatory, voluntary, et cetera, from officials, this is something we know that we need to work on. I'm going to say we're doing better at it, but every experience is an opportunity to learn and do better. There was one tweet that went out confusing the area of the order, and it was taken down pretty quickly. This is a learning process. We're doing the best we can. We recognize that there is room for improvement, and we value constructive criticism to that extent. Consistent language is something that, frankly, every agency in the county or in the state right now is working on, trying to get public messaging consistent and clear and actionable for an evacuation, keeping in mind that evacuations are scary. Social media is great. It can be a really valuable tool. Facebook, Twitter, Nextdoor, they also can be a source of misinformation or information that hasn't been verified. So if you're in doubt about your residents needing to evacuate or being in danger, please visit the Community Warning System's website and look on their map and see whether your residence is within the area that needs to evacuate. Moving on to where you're supposed to take your animals, I hate to deliver this message, but this is something we need your community to plan for with one another, assuming that you're not going to receive assistance from an agency or a department with the movement and sheltering of your animals. Why did it take so long to repopulate? We need to keep in mind, and again, this is an unpopular message, the deer zone incident, as significant and traumatizing as it was for us, is sandwiched in with ongoing firefights around the region. The number of signatories that we needed to reopen this area safely and to repopulate without putting our community at risk and without putting the firefighters at risk. It included the CAL FIRE operations chief, who was actively engaged in fighting fires in Santa Cruz, Stanislaus County, a lot of other areas. It required our health services officer to sign off. It required our community admin officer to sign off. It required, it's just a dizzying number of wet signatures that were required. And that due diligence, as painful as it is when you just want to get home, is really kind of what we want from our agencies. We want people to move very carefully when lives and property are at risk. Having said that, there is always room for improvement. And if you want to go on to the next slide, Chief. I wanted to just reiterate that we have lots of room to learn lessons. We have things that we're requesting the community to do. And among those things, tangibly, are register for the community warning system, please. You can register up to 3 residences, and I'll let Lorena speak to that if anyone has additional questions about that. We're asking people to make plans and to share those plans with their neighbors, understanding that you all know your neighbors better than we do, better than our government agencies do. You know who's going to have trouble evacuating, who's going to need assistance, who might not get the message, who's not going to be able to evacuate at all. we're asking you guys to continue, the community to continue making plans that are helpful to your neighbors, and also to continue giving us constructive criticism. That's what we're here for, and we want to continue with safe, effective evacuations. I think that was all I had. I don't know if Chief O'Bara or Giambroni wanted to contribute.
Yeah, what I'd recommend is I think you've set the table, and I think I want to offer the opportunity for Chief Giambroni as the incident commander. Obviously, he works in collaboration with OES, but he does look through a little different lenses, being the initial boots on the ground and handling the operations. Chief Giambroni, anything you would like to add from your perspective?
I'm not going to share my video just for the fact that I'm moving around because I'm having to use my cell phone, but I can give a quick explanation on the events that started that day, and then kind of through the evening, and then when it transitioned to the team, if you want.
Please.
So I'll start out with initially we were dispatched to Briones Valley Road with one engine and myself. The reason why we had that was we had multiple fires in the area, and that was the only resource that we had was myself and one engine coming from Patterson. So when I arrived at scene, I met with Chief Ozan from East County, sized up the incident that we had. It was probably 10 or 15 acres. We went to the top of Briones Valley Ridge, and from that, I could see 4 additional fires. So I knew at that point that we were going to have a significant extended attack, knowing that Round Valley and that the fire was burning towards Morgan territory and also on Marsh Creek Road. So I chose to set up a incident base at Round Valley Staging. I broke the incident up into branches, and I assigned chief officers to those different branches. As we got further into the fight, I started ordering resources, and as everybody knows, we had significant fires in the area, and we were unable to get a lot of the resources that I requested. Fortunately, Contra Costa County took the time to pre-position additional strike teams, and those resources were used on the initial dispatch. When we put the first warning into effect, the Round fire, the larger of the fires, which ended up being, I think it was approximately 2,600 acres when everything was all said and done, was probably 150 acres at that point. My concern was the fire burning up to Morgan territory and us having to do structure protection with resources that we didn't have. As we got further into the day, air resources were in a drawdown, and we had very limited resources. And one thing that I want to make sure that I emphasize is that air resources are assigned to an incident, and then any new fires, those air resources can be taken away from the incident that they're at to try and keep that new incident to a smaller size fire. Once we got resources in place and we were able to, I'm going to say about 5 o'clock that evening, start making some headway on the Round fire, we had expectations of a second incident with lightning and erratic winds and fire behavior. We had the second of the 2 larger fires, which was the Palm fire, was about 30 acres. And we were at about 40% containment on that. And then we started experiencing some significant wind and fire activity. And we ended up having to take resources off of the Round fire and bring them over to the Palm fire. And that's about the time that we started getting fire activity that was burning towards the mobile home park, and then fire below the resources on the Round fire, which prompted us to extend the warning, which ended up turning into the evacuation order, because I'm going back to my experience with the campfire and that fire moving at about 3 miles an hour, which is significant. And it would not give us enough time to get the residents out. So that's always something that I have to think about as an incident commander, is that when we have a fire burning and I need to do evacuations, because of the Marsh Creek, Morgan Territory area and getting sheriff's officers in there to do the evacuations, I have to have some reflex time. And with that, that's why we chose to go with the evacuation order and trying to get people out, because I did not know with the predicted forecasted weather, if we were going to be able to hold it with the resources we had. We were not going to get any additional resources. Transition into the next day, we ended up making a good stop on the Palm Fire, and that ended up being about 560 acres, which in the grand scheme of things is a very significant fire. And we were able to contain it with 7 fire engines, which is not normal. So that next day, the team transitioned in and we had additional resources come in. But once again, a fire that size, the round fire being about 1,500 acres at that point, we have more than 14 engines assigned to it. And that's basically what we had that second day, was 14 engines with no aircraft starting in the morning. Later that day, we did get some aircraft on it. So I will say that with the evacuation order that came across, I apologize to everybody, but when I gave the approval for the terminology in my head, it sounded right. But then when it actually came out and I read it, there was some confusion on my part as well. And that's why we came back and tried to fix what we had initially sent out. So I'll pass it over to Chief Albert that could probably talk about some of the Facebook posts that came from East County, I believe.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. So when it comes to public information, the main goal, of course, is to provide the most up-to-date factual information that is available straight from the incident commander at that point in time. We early on, as Chief Giambrone said, recognized that this was going to be a large-scale event. I was made the prime public information officer for the event early that Sunday morning. So with respect to providing information out on whether it be an hourly or twice a day kind of basis, typically we have information that's provided to us generally on twice a day kind of a time frame. So what we will not do is put out information that hasn't been confirmed and that we don't know from the Unified Command Post. So even on the second day, we received a lot of information and requests from even the media asking about larger acres that were burned than what we currently knew at the Unified Command Post. And we were reporting much smaller amount of acres that were burned because that is what we knew at the time. Frankly, I mean, there's no way possible to be able to provide enough information on an hourly basis on how the fire is reacting because of the nature of the event, and especially in the middle of the night, where we don't have accurate information on how many acres have been consumed from hour to hour. So what we try to do, of course, is coordinate with OES, with Meredith, and with the Sheriff's Office, and in a unified command setting, we present a media kind of report. We get that approved by the incident commander. That gets turned over to the Sheriff's Office, and then we work with CWS. We try, and we continue to try to get better at it, that as our alerts go out, CWS is the first one to make that announcement, and then we can actually repost that through our social media channels. So it has the most capability getting out to the most amount of people. In the information setting, we will utilize whatever means that we can to be able to get it out to the most. And that, of course, is primarily through CWS. Secondarily would be through the traditional media, whether it be the news media out there. and thirdly would be through the social media channels. So we understand there was some confusion, and as all the other participants have said, we continue to strive to try to make improvements on that on a daily basis.
All right, very good. And thank you for adding to that, Chief Albert, Meredith, and also Chief Jambroni. Now Chief Marcucci was not here at this specific incident, and he was managing the whole SCU lightning complex, which there was a lot of activity throughout the unit. And this was one of the areas of which he was in contact with Chief Jambroni. Chief Marcucci, is there anything for the good of the order before we go to questions and answers that you would like to highlight and or reinforce or state that hasn't already been said?
Yeah, and not to correct you there, Chief, but I did make an appearance at Round Valley for about 30 minutes. So I did actually, because, you know, my love for Contra Costa runs deep. So, but let me give you guys a quick overview. My Chief Jake Hess, he's the unit chief of the 5 counties. And for those of you that don't know, the Santa Clara unit encompasses not only Contra Costa, but Alameda, Santa Clara, and the west sides of San Joaquin and Stanislaus counties, covering about 1.3 million acres of state responsibility area. About 3 o'clock in the morning, I was woken up by my chief who lives in Santa Cruz, basically saying that this was going to be a legitimate deal. They were already starting to get lightning strikes. And in about that 3-hour time frame, our region, along with the San Mateo Santa Cruz unit and the Sonoma Lake Napa unit, received 22,000 lightning strikes in that area. And in our unit alone, in the 5 counties that I mentioned, we received 28 downstrikes that started eventually fires. Of those 28 fires that all started within about an hour and a half to 2 hours of themselves, they merged into 22 fires, which is now merged into what we now call the SCU Lightning Complex, which today stands at 391,578 acres and is the 2nd largest fire in California's history. So that being said, my role that evening was we go into what we call our lightning plan, and we zone out the unit. And the problem was we had so many fires so quickly, and I only have 16 engines across the 5 counties, that we ran out of fire engines in about, I would say, about 12 minutes. And we ran out of our bulldozers and our hand crews. So our first fire started in Santa Clara County off of Marsh Road, which is just east of San Jose. That's what became the Calaveras zone. The Contra Costa side then got going as well, but we did have a significant fire in Livermore. That was the Arroyo fire. And that's what took the majority of the resources that normally serve the East Bay. And so by the time it came for the fire on Briones Valley in Deer Valley, we were pretty much out of trucks, like Brian said. So we really rely on our cooperative agreement that we have with all of our local government partners in Contra Costa County. And it just ballooned from there. Basically, I think by 6 o'clock that night, I probably had 50,000 acres burning across 5 counties. And ultimately, this affected Merced County and actually San Benito County. So actually, we went through about 7 counties in the whole thing. We're still actively engaged in it. I'm happy to say that the Deer Zone, we called controlled yesterday. The rehab is done on it. The repair work is done on it. We're now working with Contra Costa Water District, as well as East Bay Regional Parks, on what they call a WERT, which is a watershed emergency response team that comes out and looks at water quality issues. So for example, the area above Los Vaqueros, where that burned, thankfully it didn't burn as hot and as hard as we thought it was going to. So I'm not thinking there's a lot of runoff that's going to come into the reservoir this winter if we do get a heavy rainstorm, which is great news for everybody that uses that reservoir for their drinking water. So we're still working through all those kinds of things afterwards. If you were here for the Morgan fire, if you were here for the fire we had in Curry Canyon, if you were here for the fire that we had last year on the Marsh, and Marsh 1 through 14, it seems like all these different things that we've worked through, this is nothing different. The issue this time was the 3,500 acres, which was ultimately the Deer Zone, which was actually larger than the Morgan fire in 2013, really became a small piece of a very large puzzle. And I know a lot of the folks expressed a lot of frustration because when we do a complex, we didn't do a very good job. We did actually a pretty poor job of actually breaking those fires out into the individual areas. And so when we were giving the acreage for the whole fire, we didn't break that out to what was in Contra Costa, what was in Alameda, what was in Santa Clara. And we heard that from the residents and the electeds in all 5 of those counties. And we've worked with the team to improve that next time. What happens basically, and I'll end with this, operationally speaking, we could have handled all of these fires. I have plenty of battalion. I have 13 battalion chiefs. I have 4 assistant chiefs that work for me. What we did have a problem with was logistics. Normally on a 400,000 acre fire, which has only been one in history, so I'm going off of very little background here, we have about 7,000 firefighters assigned to that fire. This fire, at the height of it, we had 2,000, and we only had 1,000 for the first 10 days. So the issue, though, is I have to feed 1,000 people. I have to house 1,000 people. They have to have water to drink. They have to use the bathroom. They have to take a shower at some point. And logistically speaking, I don't have the people to do that. So that's why we call on our team, the incident management team that came in. And basically, those are folks from all over California from different fire agencies. And so we lose a lot of that local feeling that you normally have when myself and Brian, the East Contra Costa guys, show up and do that thing. So the Morgan fire, we were very attached to you guys. We had one team that was the only fire. We had, basically town hall meetings. We had folks standing at Clayton with sandwich boards, basically saying, here's what's going on. Here's what we're doing. You guys knew every second of every moment what was going on with that fire, plus it was at your back door. So when we went to this complex where basically I'm going to take this fire is going to be with me till I retire. I guarantee it. I mean, we have 600 square miles of land damaged in our unit right now. And so we weren't able to provide that personal attention to you. And for that, I apologize. There's nothing I could have done about it, but I know that you have come to expect a certain level of service from not only myself and the CAL FIRE guys at Sunshine, but also East Contra Costa. And from the CAL FIRE side, we didn't deliver that. I don't know what I could have done differently because we had so much fire, and we still lost 50 something homes, for the folks that are out of sight of Contra Costa County. So that hopefully that answers a couple of questions. Basically we just didn't do a good enough job on that, and we'll work on that next time. So other than that, like I said, Chief Cimbroni had many conversations with me throughout that morning, and I had the unenviable task of saying, I have nothing to send you. I mean, literally it would have been me with a lunch and a shovel. I think is about all I had to send. So it's an awful position I was put into because I had 5 incident commanders, such as Brian, asking for resources, and it took us probably 72 hours to get reinforcements. I mean, Brian was up for over 48 hours to the point where there was arguments like, you need to go to sleep. I have guys that have been out for 3 days, don't want to leave the fire line. So I just wanted to fill you guys in a little bit on what was happening during that thing, globally speaking. We're at 1,500 residences destroyed in San Mateo and Santa Cruz counties right now. The whole Big Basin State Park has been destroyed, including their historic headquarters, and as well as another 1,000 residents in Sonoma Lake Napa. So we actually fared the best, but we had the largest fire. So take that for what it's worth. But like I said, we are taking a ton of notes. We will improve on this. I just never thought we'd have almost 400,000 acres in my career in the Bay Area. So end of report.
Very good, Mike. And again, thank you to those that spoke. And so what I want to do is we're going to transition. We do have many more topics we want to hit here tonight, but we do not want to dismiss, and we are not trying to move away. And I think that what I'm hoping that you hear from us is that we have identified, and we were debriefing during the incident, post-incident. We're still working today as collaborators, knowing that we need to communicate a little bit more effectively in the way of which we do. But we also need help from you as the citizens of not only being prepared and being planned and helping move that conversation forward. So what I want to do to try to satisfy this topic here tonight, and we're willing to take these conversations again offline with individuals or reconvene at another time to reinforce other topics. But what I'm going to give the hard task of doing with Susannah is I can't see the chat, she can. And what I would like to do is try to address things that have not been addressed. I hear there's some chatter going on that some things are being resolved. So Susannah, is there any specific questions that you see that have not been resolved within the chat that we can address prior to going on to the new topic? I want to make sure we do.
Yeah, there's a couple. For starters, Ed, I just want to acknowledge that we got your question about Measure X, and it will get answered later on in the presentation. Right now, we're trying to take questions that are very apropos to this part of the conversation. I think a lot of them got answered. Animal evacuation, large animals, hold your horses has been mentioned in the chat. Thank you to all the people in chat who are helping answer the questions. That's super helpful. Margaret Cruz had a question about can property owners annually meet with fire representatives to show where our graded roads and gates exist? Because she said firefighters seem to not be aware of how they could access fire on the property.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually, the answer to the question is yes, we would love to be able to coordinate and work with you. We do have ways of which that we can put things within the system that identifies where our fire trails are, where access points are. Chief Albert, do you want to hit that first? Then we can also have Chief Jambroni jump in too.
Can you repeat the question, Chief?
Yeah, so we have residents within the area that have access on their properties to be able to get, from fire trails to other areas. And they want to know on an annual basis if we can be able to work with them to be able to take inventory of them.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. We are working, actually currently right now, we're working on a program called First Due. And there is a community aspect to that program. Basically, that develops pre-fire plans, both for all the commercial occupancies within the district, but also the residential occupancies can actually add into that program. So over the course of this next year, we'll be rolling that out. We do know that there are a lot of properties out there that, one, we know some of the fire trails that have been out there and they're maintained. Those fire trails that we look for the property owners to actually maintain those for us. And that there's a lot of property out there with access points that we don't know of yet. So that would be a prime opportunity to be able to incorporate this new program, be able to show us exactly what is available out there on those properties, and look forward to our website and most likely social media, be rolling out that program within this next year and be able to work with some of these property owners a lot better. Hopefully that answers those questions.
Yeah, great answer. Another one thing that I would like to state is, we'll hit this later on here tonight, is we are going to be talking about the Marsh Creek Morgan Territory Emergency Response Team. And our goal and objective, we had an introductory meeting with them just the other night. It might have been yesterday, I feel like a week ago. But the goal is to be able to do year-round community risk reduction, be able to get good information gathering, get good intelligence, understand who is not ambulatory, where our challenges are, work with vegetation hazard abatement in the community to make it safer. And so this sounds like a great opportunity. So whoever posed the question, I'll have information at the end of this. You can reach out to Chief Albert and or myself, and or try to find anyone that is participating on the Marsh Creek Emergency Response Team, as we're going to try to work with them to create a safer community year-round. So I think you bring up a great point. Thank you. Next question, please.
Susannah, can we maybe speak, this is Meredith, can we maybe speak to the cell tower outage issue?
Yeah, that was actually on my list. Yeah, we can go ahead and take that one right now. There were a couple of parts to that one. One was, if power goes out and the cell towers go, like they did with PG&E shutoffs last year, does the CWS still work on the cell phone? There was also another question that seemed pertinent to that. Wanted to know if the mobile cell site option was available, known as COW, at times when the sites are down.
So one thing I wanted to point out, and this is a great time to talk about it, is that we may lose cell towers during a fire or during a power outage. There is legislation coming through that's going to help us know which towers are down. It's not currently actionable in a way that would be useful. Having said all that, register your landlines, please, with CWS, and also consider getting a NOAA weather radio that will that you can program and will spit out alerts regardless of whether the cell towers are down. So we lost in the county last year during the late October wildfires and power outages. We lost something like 30% of cell towers, and we didn't really know which ones were down until after the fact. And that's changing, but it's slow to change. So in the meantime, until we can count on having that information, please get a weather radio and register your landlines with CWS. That's all I've got on that.
Great, thank you, Meredith. We had another question, Tamara Steiner. There was some conflicting information and she was just wondering if there was some explanation. Residents were apparently getting information from some of the sheriff's deputies where some said it was mandatory to evacuate, others said it was just an advisory evacuation.
So the language issue continues to be kind of inconsistent. What you'll hear from CWS is what you want to go with. You're either going to be told prepare to evacuate, which means get ready, or go if you need the extra time, or leave now. Whether they use the terms mandatory, order, that shouldn't matter. We're going to do our best to train people into consistent language because it is an issue. It's an ongoing issue. But in the, like, I can't promise that's not going to happen again. We want to let everybody know that if you're told to leave, leave. If you're told that to get ready to leave, get ready to leave. That's all I've got on that.
Great, thanks, Meredith. We had another question. This is kind of sad that I have to ask this. Margaret, I'm so sorry. Margaret says, as the property owner of one of the burn properties, who could she reach out to regarding fire hoses that were left behind? She says there's 6 very large fire hoses on their property.
If they want to contact Sunshine Fire Station tomorrow, I put a text up there, but it says it went to private. But they want to contact Sunshine Fire Station tomorrow between 8 and 5 and give a location. We'll go and pick it up.
Great, thank you. The rest of the questions are mainly to do with communication suggestions that have already been addressed, as well as large animal evacuation. And I think the bulk of those have been answered by other people in text. So again, thank you. But if I didn't catch anybody's question, text me directly and I'll make sure and catch it on the next go around.
Okay, so with that, in respect of time, because we do have a lot more to cover, we're going to transition, but please continue. If we did miss anything, reinforce it and ask another question. One thing that I also want to put in regards to just kind of managing expectations a little bit on our behalf, because it wasn't stated here, just kind of putting an overbrush on the whole thing is, listen, the community warning system is a place to go to. And we do try to communicate on a frequent basis, but in the time of emergencies and the time of crisis, twice a day is a realistic expectation of that we really try to hit. We try to do it more frequently, but there's a lot of times of which, due to lack of information, the dynamic complexity of what we're dealing with, we give the updates, but if you don't hear anything, it means the status hasn't changed. And we try to update at least twice a day. So we want to do it as frequently as we can. You'll see when we have the only incident going on, it is a lot more frequent. But just again, if you only hear from us twice a day, because things aren't really changing as much, that's what we, at minimum, try to do. So I just want to drill that in. Fair questions, and we're trying to make it better. So let me get into East Contra Costa Fire, CAL FIRE relationship. East Contra Costa Fire, as I stated, is your local fire district. I'm also going to discuss about ambulance response times and give you some real data and 2 incidents that happened recently and explain why some of the response times may have been extended. And also talk about the Marsh Creek Morgan Territory Emergency Response Team, or CERT program, Community Emergency Response Team. That is a actual federal program that works within not only the local counties around the area. And we have had some obstacles and challenges of the past of the term used Morgan Territory Volunteer Fire Department, and there's challenges with that terminology, which we've been able to work through. And we have transitioned into a community emergency response team. So I'm gonna hit on all of these items, and we will take questions at the end. I'm gonna start off, and I'm gonna let Chief Marcucci jump in. But again, the East Contra Costa Fire District is your local jurisdiction through LAFCO and Contra Costa County, the 250 square miles I stated to you. It is our jurisdiction. In our jurisdiction, we have a local response area, an SRA, or state regulated response area, and we work hand in hand with CAL FIRE. During the winter months, we have a partnership with CAL FIRE, and we actually fund what is called the Amador Agreement. And that agreement, what it does is during the winter months, we pay to maintain and keep the staffing year-round at the Sunshine Station. If we did not participate in the Amador Agreement, the Sunshine Station would only be staffed during the summer or fire season months. And we ensure as the fire district that we fund it to make sure that they are there year-round. Another thing to know is that during the summer months is that the primary responsibility of the Sunshine Station is state responses. They respond out of our area on a regular basis to be able to handle state SRA land throughout the whole county and throughout the unit. They are what they call a must cover station. So if they leave our area, they will send another unit, but sometimes it takes some time for that unit to get to the Sunshine Station. And a lot of times will be the first responding agency because we do not leave. We have dedicated units here. and we will respond as your local response agency all the time. And so with that being said, is that primarily when a call comes in, that Sunshine Station is covered in the summer months. If they're not there, we'll have another unit that will backfill. But you'll also find that if they go on a state response area during the summer and during the winter months, they're considered one of our resources. So they really do not leave our jurisdiction because they are dedicated to East Contra Costa as their primary service. But during the summer months, they go to state. So we heavily rely upon CAL FIRE because of the location. And I believe that we have a very great, strong working relationship with them. But it is very important to know, again, that East Contra Costa Fire Protection District is your fire district. And we work with CAL FIRE in a way of which to provide a year-round elevated level of fire protection to the residents of the Marsh Creek and Morgan Territory area. So it is a partnership. We could not do and or perform to the way of which we do without them. They work hand in hand with us, and we really appreciate our relationship. But it's important to know how that works. Chief Marcucci, do you want to reinforce, add, or modify anything I may have said?
No, I pretty much you nailed all the parts I was going to talk about. And it is a contract, and while we seem to be out on Marsh Creek and Morgan Territory, we're the only public building out there, and it tends to be City Hall at times. We are a contract of East Contra Costa Fire Protection District. So, and we've enjoyed that relationship in this contract for about 18 years now. So, and I don't see an end in sight for that contract. So I think it makes sense for all involved. And we just appreciate the support we get from the community. This is my 30th fire season, and I've never seen a community support a fire station as much as the folks in Marsh Creek, Morgan Territory. So we've said it before, we'll say it again. We work in partnership, and we just appreciate the support, and we enjoy the continued relationship.
Thank you. And, to reinforce that, I think, in hindsight, and coming at least from my office, from our organization, as I know that, we've lacked a presence from some regard, and it's because of the remoteness and how it has been. And we are really trying to make sure that we are actively engaged and communicating. And that's why you're finding that Chief Marcucci, Chief Jambroni, myself, and the command staff, they're here from Chief Albert and Chief McCumber that is not here tonight. We're trying to become actively engaged and partner and be more active within the community. But they are an extension of us during the winter months. I mean, Chief Jambroni is an extension. He's like one of our battalion chiefs out in that area. So I just really want to know that it is a CAL FIRE resource, but during the winter months, it's really like an extension of our resources. And when they're there, they, are speaking on our behalf, we're working hand in hand, and we communicate with each other. And I just want to make sure that the residents are aware of that. If there's any questions, we'd be more than happy to address it. I want to talk a little bit about response times, and we'll hit not only about the agreements with East Contra Costa CAL FIRE, ambulance response times, and the CERT team. I'll address all those questions after I get through these three topics. The ambulance response times, now we did it very clearly for the rural portions of the 94517 zip code. We have two different, there's code 3 and code 2 calls. Code 3 is lights and sirens. Code 2 is just following the regular laws of the road, responding to the calls. Since January through September, there were 69 code 3 calls. We have a contract time. When I say we do not provide transportation services. East Contra Costa Fire, CAL FIRE, we do not provide transportation. We provide first response. So we arrive at scene, we do treatment, we will package, we will work with the ambulance when it arrives, and they will transport. So CAL FIRE nor East Contra Costa does the transportation, but we do provide the first response, and we do the primary care, and we transfer it to the ambulances. So the ambulances are overseen through what is called the Alliance in Contra Costa County. They have the contract to provide ambulance services throughout the county. The only areas of which Alliance does not provide transportation services is in Moraga Orinda and in San Ramon Valley. San Ramon Valley and Moraga Orinda Fire have their own transportation, but everywhere else, from Richmond all the way throughout the county to us, Walnut Creek, Lafayette, and otherwise, it is all done by the Alliance, overseen by Contra Costa County Fire. So the code 3 calls, there's 69 calls. The contract time is they need to be there for a code 3 call within 20 minutes. The average response time for those calls is 15 minutes and 59 seconds. And the code 3 compliance, they are hitting, they need to hit 85% percentage rate is what they need to hit on an annual basis. And that's what that's what they're hitting on an annual basis. On code 2 calls, there's 25 code 2 calls. And they need to be able to hit those calls in 45 minutes. And the average response time is 24 minutes, and the compliance, they're hitting that 96% of the time. So out of every 100 calls, 85 of them for code 3s, they are making within the 20-minute window. And on the code 2 calls, 96 out of 100, they're making at the 45-minute mark. There are 2 incidents that we had found. One that happened in February, and another one happened in April. And one thing that I want folks to know is that on both these calls, one of them was a 45-minute response time. It was a code 2, non-lights and sirens. And another one was 33 minutes, the same thing. Is the remote area does present a challenge for the ambulances. With that also being said is that on code 2, non-priority calls, what happens is we only have so many ambulances within the county. And when a code 3 life-threatening call comes in, what you're going to find is they'll take a unit that was responding to a code 2 non-life-threatening situation, and they'll reassign them. And they'll reassign another another ambulance to that non-life-threatening call. And so you'll find in both the situations, that's what's really occurred, is that there was a unit swap, and it did create a delayed response time. But the challenges of getting up into some of the areas in the Marsh Creek area do create a delay to some degree. But I think the more important point is that I did go back and I did run the data, and we are meeting the threshold, or the ambulances are meeting the threshold. This is not looking at your engine response times. There's a high priority that the engine response times are going to be there at a faster rate. But the challenge is also this. We triage our calls from what is considered to be an A through E, so alphabetically. A is called an alpha, E is called an echo. An alpha call is a ambulance-only response. We do not send an engine company because it's non-life threatening, and we only go to life-threatening calls, which is the echoes, the deltas, and the charlies. So for that reason, it does seem like that it may take a little bit longer for us to get to those types of calls, but we're also triaging, and which means we're sorting out. We're sorting out the type of calls that we go to, and sometimes ambulances get swapped out due to a more urgent type incident. So if I didn't hit on any of the incidents, I just want to let you know that we are hitting to what is required of us throughout the county. But the response times are going to be a little delayed, specifically within the area of which we are. And, you know, you guys know better than I do. You know, you're out there every day. I'm not out there every day, but you know how long it would take just to drive from downtown Clayton to the top of Morgan Territory Road, just in a regular vehicle going normal traffic speed. And that's real. And so what I will tell you is that we try to get resources out there as fast as we can. But if there's any questions in regards to specific calls, we can also talk offline. We'll communicate. But again, we do triage the type of calls we go to. And the more severe they are, obviously, if it was a code 3 priority call, we would never swap out. You'll get closest resource as fast as you can. Hopefully that provides some clarity on that question. The Marsh Creek Morgan Territory Community Emergency Response Team, I'm happy to report out on this. This is something for the past year that we've been really trying to figure out the best way to work in collaboration with the communities. I do want to state very clearly that I do appreciate, we have worked very recently with John Washabi and also I'm going to say Pat Dugan, because they've been the conduit of the conversations, is that for the past 2 years, there's been concerns about the utilization of what is called the volunteer firefighters. I'm not going to get into a lot of the reasonings as to why. They both understand, as does the team. We met last night, actually. They have the Morgan Territory Association, which is a community association to provide many things outside of community emergency response in crisis situations. And we are working in a way to collaborate with them. We need to make sure that we don't we want to make sure everybody operates safely, ourselves and them. We want to make sure there's not the concern of impersonation of firefighters, which is a legal issue that we've been overcoming. But I will tell you is that we are very excited at the fact that the community wants to work with us to not only work year round for community risk reduction, to take care of vegetation hazard abatement, to look at access, look at egress, take inventory of the people that are there within the Marsh Creek and Morgan Territory area. They have told, today we discussed with Pat, that it's very inclusive. Those that live in Marsh Creek and Morgan Territory, although it is the Morgan Territory Association, that they are really welcoming people to come in and work with them. I want to be very clear that we do not have everything figured out right now. What we do know is that that group is going to be the Marsh Creek, Morgan Territory Community Emergency Response Team, otherwise known as CERT. I said it earlier, CERT is a national and a local recognized program. CERT programs are recognized throughout the state. It provides training for someone that has no experience and people that are well experienced, and it provides a way for us to communicate, activate, and understand how we work with each other. And other agencies that come from the outside in understand if you're a CERT member, they understand what that means. We do not have it figured out outside of the fact that we know that we want to formalize and create a Marsh Creek Morgan Territory CERT team. We also know and we agree that the concept of a volunteer fire department is very problematic for many reasons, and that is why we're doing a CERT program. There are multiple meetings coming up in the very near future. You can reach out to the district if you're interested, and or you can reach out to anyone that's involved in that area. We are working on trying to get good communications, but we have meetings coming up on the 23rd, October 7th, and October 21st, and we're working towards, once we can figure out the CERT program and how the district would activate the CERT team, and making sure there's a safe understanding of those that are not working underneath the CERT umbrella, but are trying to help their neighbors when the CERT team isn't activated, but just trying to help their neighbors in the interim. Once we can get that kind of, we're going to go every 2 weeks with a meeting until we can get it formalized, and then we're going to go to a quarterly meeting thereafter to maintain it. I want to be very clear. We want to work very close to be able to make a safe community. And if my neighbor's home, it gets impacted by fire, if there's a medical, I want to go and help them. But there is also things that we need to make sure that we don't do. We don't want to impersonate, firefighters. We don't want to go into someone's property that doesn't welcome us. We need to make sure that we operate safely and don't get overextending ourselves. And we also need to make sure that we don't become, we're part of the solution. We don't add to the problem. And that's exactly what we're going to work through. And we have a lot of work to do. So again, I don't want to misconstrue that we have this figured out, but I'm excited to say it's taken us about a year to get here. I think it's well overdue, and we're well on our way to figuring out how we can better work with each other. And again, I thank John and Pat for working with the district and kind of leading the front with the leadership with us to be able to get this in the appropriate channels and work well. So I'm excited, and I'm interested to see how this plays out in the days to come. So I'll address any questions on that. So hopefully that gives you a good update on, again, your fire district, our cooperation with CAL FIRE, ambulance responses, and the Marsh Creek Morgan Territory Emergency Response CERT team. And I think we'll just go right into questions in respect to that.
Cool. We actually had one good question in chat, but Mike Marcucci took care of that and answered that for Ben. And does anybody want to raise their hand and ask a question? You can physically raise your hand, use the little blue hand under participants. Do I have a raised hand? It's hard to see with the screen sharing. Okay, I'm seeing no raised hands. Oh, question. How do we find out about joining CERT? That's from Gwen Daly.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is, that's a fair question. So what I would do is, in the interim, if you want to, at the very end, I'm going to put down Chief Albert's and or my contact information if you want to contact us in the interim. What we're going to do for the CERT team is we're working on finalizing, and we were discussing just yesterday of how to get a contact information and get that out. So that's how fresh and new this is. We met yesterday. That was yesterday, right, Chief Albert? Was that yesterday or the day prior? And so we're working on, we'll put an announcement out and let people know if you want to participate on the Community Emergency Response Team, the CERT program. The county-wide has a county CERT team, and that we are going to we're going to host one for this area. So we're working on that. But in the interim, because I want everyone to have access to somebody, you can email Chief Arbor or I. And then once we build that channel, we'll probably defer that to the actual CERT team that's up there. And we're working on finalizing that. So you can contact us in the interim.
Cool. That was our last question on this topic. So moving on.
Yeah, and I think just to be respectful, because I don't want to be blindsided, because he's been working hand in hand. Chief Marcucci, are we aligned? I'm going to move on to the next topic. Is there anything else you want to add on that?
As I can find the unmute button. Yeah, no, we're good. I'm just jumping on a couple things here. Some folks about apps and some information and things along those lines. So no, everything you're saying we're right on track with. So carry on.
Thank you. So the next topic we want to address, and I know it's very important, especially with the topography, geography, and where we are within that region, is vegetation hazard abatement. I'm going to be deferring over to Fire Marshal Steve Albert. Again, he's been our fire marshal since May of 2019. Our fire prevention program is new. Many people don't know that, but we are a very new bureau. Contra Costa County Fire historically did all of our prevention responsibilities. In 2019, the East Contra Costa Fire Protection District took over and established our own fire prevention bureau. So we made some very large strides in very short term, and I give those accolades to Chief Albert, getting us to where we need to go, and we know we have some work to do. But he's responsible for not only fire investigations, plan review, and inspections, and all things community risk reduction, including vegetation hazard abatement. So, Chief Albert.
Thank you, Chief. You took part of my, presentation right away there. So, as you can see from the slide, press release went out talking about fire season arise, reduction of services, and how that all kind of plays a part into the overall presentation of what we've been doing. So starting as of July 1st, the fire district, due to the lack of resources, have to go to a defensive only operation. And what that means is that we will risk a lot to gain a lot. If there is a life safety risk involved, of course, we will do everything we possibly can to be able to mitigate that threat and be able to rescue that person as much as we can. With the same token, though, if we're talking about property, if we're talking about grasslands, that is a different kind of strategy that we have in the fire service. So that is kind of, leads us into the overall vegetation abatement. The prime goal, if we want to switch to the next slide, Chief, prime goal, of course, of the weed abatement program is to reduce the threat from combustible weeds throughout the entire jurisdiction. We do have different standards, and for our LRA, or our local response area, we have everything from 5 acres or less that property owners are required to maintain the grass down to no taller than 3 inches and remove it 100% off the property. For properties that are greater than 5 acres, we require that they maintain a 30-foot field break around the perimeter of the property with 15-foot cross breaks, breaking those down into 5-acre sections. In our SRA, we support CAL FIRE's LE 100 program, which is a 100-foot defensible space around each of those properties. The biggest part of what we've been growing into, as the Chief stated, we've just started last year. We went through a code adoption section where we're able to build out our ordinance a little bit better, and we continue to evaluate as we go through this entire process. So currently right now, what we did, we took on a little bit more authority this year. We had the 2 cities and the county and CAL FIRE help us with identifying many of these properties. We have what we call annual recurring properties that we know we have nuisance and hazards on. And that goes into a master list that we call our Exhibit A. And these properties have been known to all those different agencies as having these problems. We can work much faster on those different properties. And then we have new properties that haven't been known to us. Obviously, we have limited resources to be able to get around to all 44,000 plus properties throughout the entire jurisdiction. So that's where we really work with and rely on the community. I'm happy to say that we launched a app that's available both on Google and Apple, where you can actually download the app and make a notification and a complaint about a piece of property that needs to be abated. And we'll be more than happy to investigate and work with the property owner to try to abate those hazards. But we really rely on the community to be our eyes and ears. We can only get to so much, obviously, but once we do know about an issue, we will take that issue seriously and investigate it and have it to the abatement process. Our process goes through a 3-step notification where we give the property owner 3 times to be able to abate this issue on their own. After that point in time, we go seek permission from our fire board to be able to turn this property owner to our abatement contractor because that property hasn't been mitigated. Our mitigation contractor goes out, abates the property, comes back. We then seek, the invoice goes back in front of the board, and then we seek cost reimbursement through a lien process to be able to recoup our cost of how much it costs us to abate that property. That is the full step process. There are other requirements that come into play, such as straight from the fire code. We talk about roadway clearance for emergency apparatus. Minimum, standards based off of that is like 13 foot, 6 inches of clearance of height. So we don't knock any equipment off those fire engines trying to respond out there. And there's roadway widths, depending on what type of, construction is out there, how many homes are out there. And that can range anywhere between 16 feet to over 20 feet minimum, depends on the nature of the neighborhood out there. Next slide, please. So we've been working pretty diligently about trying to increasingly grow every single year. And we keep retooling and evaluating. We do have a close relationship both with CAL FIRE and with our code enforcement counterparts throughout the entire district. And that's the key thing, is that we're here to work together. Not one of us can actually take on 100% of this and be able to effectively mitigate it. But through the tools and everything that we have, we can work together to be able to reduce those hazards. When it comes to State Park, when it comes to East Bay Regional Parks, those are 2 entities completely on their own away from the district that we have limited ability to be able to mandate how they do their program out there. There's a lot of steps that goes into play when they get involved. They have to go through a full-blown environmental impact review process, make sure that there's not habitats that they're impacting. And that was one of the key things, even talking to most recently with East Bay Regional Parks, is that maintaining their trails out there came into play where they would be disturbing a eagle's nest habitat. So they have much more different kind of restrictions and requirements. And so we continue to evaluate and work through those processes. And I'm available for any questions on that topic.
All right, very good. And so listen, a couple of things I want to just say from my office as the fire chief is a couple of things, is that just to reinforce that, look, it's a new program and we know we have room for growth. We also know that we are trying to work very close with the relationship in, we have a local response area, we have a state response area, there are parks, there are a lot of different areas within our jurisdiction, and we're reinforcing and working with each of those agencies to reinforce vegetation hazard abatement, relationships, and ultimately to make a better community risk reduction. To be clear, this is going to be a multi-year approach, but the thing that's encouraging right now is that we're actively engaged and we're going to continue to advance where we are. If you've been driving throughout our jurisdiction and throughout your area, I have observed myself that we've had better enforcement and people have taken the initiative. We haven't had to go and abate properties. We have more abatement being done this year than we have in the 20 plus years that I've served within this jurisdiction. So I'm not trying to misrepresent that we are where we need to be. What I'm saying is we have taken a step forward in the right direction, and we need to refine our processes. And I also want to conclude with this on this topic. The fire district is exploring and is looking on how we can get more authority in other areas. But the challenge that I have and that Chief Albert and I struggle with is if we take on more responsibility from another agency, that is just that. It's more responsibility. There's more work to be done. And it's more, and we don't have the personnel to be able to do what we need to do. So we're trying to figure it out. All right. And so I think it's really important is that, you know, everyone trying to do their part. We collaborate with each other. We communicate with each other. I would like to, one of the biggest advocates and the voices that we hear, people up and down the area, again, is Susannah Thompson. She lets us know some of the problem areas, some of the problem properties, and we try to get on them. There are some areas that we know that are a hazard, and we're trying to work through this process, but some of them are more hazard than others. So please lean on us, continue to communicate with us, highlight the areas, do your part to make your property safe. And we'll continue to work with, you know, CAL FIRE and our other cooperating agencies as we move forward. But it's a process, and it takes all of us. So any questions, Susannah?
Yeah, we have 3 questions right now. So the first one's from Mark D. He said in Clayton Palms, which is a mobile home park, there's only one entrance. From a fire marshal perspective, is that enough?
So the fire code kind of regulates once you get over 100 homes, it does require a second exit out of that property. One of the issues, of course, that you have with a mobile home park is that's not really regulated by the local authority. That falls under the state through the ombudsman program, and they have the regulatory authority up in the mobile home parks, both for code enforcement, for access, and a number of different avenues up there. We can look at access when they were first originally constructed, but that is something that we can make note of, and through our contacts, reach out to the state and make them aware of it if they are not already. Next question.
And Troy Lee has 2 questions. One is he's heard from neighbors talking about the new app requiring you to put your name in to place a complaint, and seems to think that that's probably stopping neighbors from reporting. And the second part is he's heard about a chipping program to help with fire abatement related chipping. Does that still exist?
2 both great questions. One is about the requirement of having the reporting party actually do their names. The biggest reason for that is number one, that they remain confidential. For our area, we require and want the participation from the community. So if we did release that, that kind of, you know, defeats the part of the program that we're trying to accomplish. But number 2 is that if we don't identify exactly who's actually making the complaint, a number of different times what we've experienced is that you will have a neighbor dispute kind of in the process. And just as much as we want to make sure that everyone's following the rules and make sure the proper abatement is done, we also need to protect those rights of those people who are actually being falsely accused and not doing anything. And so we can work with someone who's trying to use the system effectively and be able to work with them to make sure that that's not a tool that they have in their toolbox. The second part of the question about the chipper program is we're very glad to see the Morgan Territory Community Group come together, because that really opens up the door for both Marsh Creek and Morgan Territory, that they have the Diablo Fire Safe Council, who actually is key for working with fuels reduction. Through that program, and we can introduce them into that group, is they open up different grants that you can apply for chipping days, where we can get a contractor out there, set them up in a primary location that the residents can come out there and actually be able to bring those their cuttings or debris and be able to have those chipped up effectively, and so you can get them off your property. You all have very diverse terrains and vegetation on your property. I have, I even spoke with Chief Marcucci early in the season about looking at a fuels reduction program along the Morgan Territory Marsh Creek area. We would love to be able to take on a lofty project. Moraga Arena did a great one that they're being a lot of praise for. Unfortunately, we just don't have the resources at that time. but Diablo Fire Safe would open up that door and be able to give us an opportunity to start small and be able to grow into that program.
And to reinforce again, this is a great opportunity year-round of working with the CERT team to be able to identify the opportunities, to be able to establish and create a safer community and have them help us execute and do that within their own communities. So there's that just opens the door for more opportunities for us. Great question. Next question.
Cool. We have one more question. This one's from Ben Kellogg. Ben says the East Contra Costa Fire Prevention District website says we have an opening for a deputy fire marshal. What kind of time frame are we looking at to get more help for fire prevention?
That really depends on our budget, Ben. You know, we put out the advertisement out there. We tried to do some good recruitment. That unfortunately was not able to be fulfilled at the time that we were hiring our 2 new fire inspectors. But we do have hope this year about probably mid-year, after we kind of fine-tune some of the infrastructure that we're looking at building in our prevention program through our records management system and whatnot, to hopefully be able to open that back up, do another recruitment for both a deputy fire marshal, and we're looking at still expanding out our program for fire inspections. For fire prevention, we're a cost neutralizing program, which means that our permit fees and how we are set up is to make sure that we are able to provide those services at zero cost to the district and to the community. So those permit fees support and actually, you know, fund a portion of the administrative costs that, you know, is related to providing those services throughout the jurisdiction. So thank you for the question.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. And that is the end of the questions, and I'm not seeing any raised hands. So I think you are good to move on.
All right, very good. Thank you. And again, if we miss any questions this far, hold them and we'll collect it on to the end. So this is going to be the last section we go into, and we'll open up to a general question and answer session. And Chief Albert is going to go over wildfire prevention tips in regards to what do you do and prepare for wildfire prevention. Chief Albert.
Thank you, Chief. So first off, I'd like to acknowledge that, you know, CAL FIRE has a great program. It's called Ready, Set, Go. Property owners, residents in areas most at risk, highly encouraged to take the steps that, you know, are outlined in that program. Their website, readyforwildfire.org, is available on there. Great information and tips about, you know, what to do when you live in those wildland urban interfaces or high fire severity zones. Next step. Next slide. So some of those things are like what we talked about. Defensible space, being ready. You have 100 foot of defensible space around your structure. We know from experience most recently that the ember cast depends on the nature of the weather going on, can actually throw embers and move that fire in a very fast direction. So that's where, you know, being ready, being responsive, and as OES was stating, be attentive to what the alerts are, have everything, you know, kind of ready and set to go. Being set means having all your family members know what to do, what the evacuation plan is, having more or less go bags with, you know, the necessary medication, pet food, your animals, how are you going to be able to evacuate them, knowing what directions that you have available, having a couple spare sets of clothes ready to go, and then preparing your home as well too. And we're going to get a little deeper into the home as well, but be able to jump in your vehicle, have it parked in an outward facing direction, and be able to be set if or when that order does come into place and you have to evacuate in an emergency. So some of the evacuation tips for inside the house. Before you leave, of course, shut all the windows and doors, leaving them unlocked. Main purpose for that, leaving them unlocked, is so if there is a fire, we can actually come in and be able to work around your area, be able to protect that property even better. Remove flammable window shades, curtains, and closed metal shutters. If you do have heat transfer that comes through the windows. That's where we want to try to eliminate those combustible debris products that can actually ignite if the fire does burn up too close to the structure there itself. Remove any of the lightweight curtains and move all the furniture away and into the center of the room. Again, we're trying to reduce that combustible load that has availability for heat transfer. So get them into the middle of the room, actually eliminates that part. Shut off your gas meter and turn off all the pilot lights. We don't want that additional hazard, of course. You're trying to eliminate that hazard. And then leave your lights on so the firefighters can actually see the house under the smoky conditions, and shut off your air conditioning system. Gather up for outside the structure, gather up all the flammable items, move them away from the exterior of the house and bring them inside. Patio furniture, children's toys, doors, mats. You're trying to, again, eliminate as much as you possibly can to be able to spread that fire and be able to impact the property. Turn off all the propane tanks, move the propane barbecue appliances away from the structures, and then really connect the garden hoses to the outside of your house and have those ready. Firefighters come up, if we can grab those, do a quick knockdown. It may not just be a full-blown fire engine that's going up into your residential area. It may be a single resource that actually going up to inspect and be able to identify how the fire's moving. They can be able to grab that spigot and be able to knock down maybe a small fire that's actually getting too close to the home. Don't leave the sprinklers on or running. That actually does take away from the water pressure that we're relying on to be able to fill up those tanks. And then again, leave the exterior lights on so the home is visible, and make sure you take your emergency supply kit with you in your vehicle. Back your car into the driveway like we discussed earlier. Make sure it's all loaded up, ready to go. The doors and windows are closed, so when you're ready to go in there, there's no smoke, there's nothing that's going to impact you. Have a ladder available if you do have one on your property, and put it up against the house. If a firefighter can quickly jump up on there on top of the roof, be able to knock down that fire, just makes it more readily available. Seal your attic and ground vents with pre-cut plywood or commercial seals. If you do live in an urban wildland interface, they do make different products that actually help protect your structure from allowing those embers to actually get in further. But that is a simple, easy way to be able to seal those up. And then make sure you patrol your property, monitor the fire situation, and really don't wait for, like we've been saying all along, don't wait for the mandatory evacuation order. If you feel threatened, just for the peace of mind, be able to get out, have your family protected, your animals protected, go early. Don't wait for the last second. Check on your neighbors. The Community Emergency Response Team is a great program that we're looking at getting up. They are looking to try to help us identify those with actually special needs. So we have more information to be able to take care of each other as a community. And then locate your pets and have them, readily available nearby, so you can actually throw them in either the trailer or in the back of a truck and be able to evacuate with them. Next slide. When it is time to evacuate, the IC or the officials will determine the areas to be evacuated and what those escape routes are, depending on where the fire's location is. As you well know, you have Marsh Creek, Morgan Territory, but as those roads get impacted, we want you to know, and the most up-to-date information is going to be coming from the officials or the incident command staff. You will see law enforcement out there, typically responsible for the evacuation order. Follow their directions. I understand that most people want to stay in their homes, but they are coming around. They are actually out there putting their lives at risk as well, to make sure everybody knows what the order is, whether you've heard it through CWS, through social media, through TV media channels. Make sure you try to abide by them, help them out, be understanding of what they're trying to accomplish as well too. And then you will be advised of potential evacuations as early as possible. Take the initiative, stay informed. Great tip from Meredith was about the NOAA radios. Just in case the power does go out, you have that available. And the biggest thing, if you feel threatened, if you have any question, just leave the area. You can always come back in later. So procedures to put in place to ensure resident safety in the event of wildfire. Besides what we've already discussed, get to know your neighbors. As we were talking about, through the CERT program is a great way. Neighborhood watch, block captains or leaders, and identifying who actually needs assistance to evacuate. You may be able to get yourself out. But if you do know of a neighbor who does have some type of assistance that's needed, and you do have the time, help them get out of those. At a minimum, be able to make that notification to emergency personnel that this person does need assistance for whatever reason. Keep a list of all your supplies, keep a list of emergency contacts, and then if you can help your neighbors, please do. Alert evacuation coordinators to possible people and families that do need assistance. There are a couple of different ways that you will find out. Like we said, Contra Costa County Community Warning System, a great app as well, and I know a lot of people abide by it, is Pulse Point. That gives out all the different events that are going on throughout the entire district. Social media through East Contra Costa Fire Protection District, CAL FIRE, and of course the Marsh Creek Morgan Territory CERT program, and try to keep your neighbors informed of what's going on. Biggest question is getting all that out so we all know what's available to us.
Very good, Chief Albert, thank you. I know that was quick and brief, and again, this is going to be recorded here tonight. We do recommend that you go to the CAL FIRE Ready, Set, Go to make sure that you're prepared. And we want to continue to reinforce this, and we're going to continue to do so through the CERT team and other mediums year-round. So we just hope there was some useful information, or at least you grabbed one or two things you never thought of before to make your home safer in a wildfire. Susannah, any questions on this topic?
Yeah, we've got one question, and also one that sounds like a really helpful suggestion from Tamara Steiner. She says that they have taken many of their irreplaceable things like family Bible, et cetera, to a storage unit downtown for the duration of fire season. Another thing, they have a pool pump and 200 feet of 1.5-inch fire hose. So a couple of suggestions that sound pretty helpful if you live out in a less urban environment. And then Gwen Daly has a question. Beyond turning off your propane tanks, what can you do with the propane tank?
Yeah, great question. I actually just answered her, but yes, turn off the propane tanks and move them away from the structure so they are away and they won't impact your residents.
Cool. I am not seeing any hands up, so I think that is the end of the questions on the wildlife prevention tips. This was super helpful, by the way.
Good. I'm glad it was helpful. So we're going to work towards the conclusion of the presentation, and then we'll open it up to a general Q&A. And I do want to say that I do understand it's 9 o'clock, or at least 1 minute till. We knew this was going to run long. Tremendous amount of information here, but we did want to be able to collect and address everything that was important to the community. We do have the town hall meeting. It's not going to be like this. We want to be respectful to address your concerns and not share with you so much of the district's challenges here tonight. That information is available on our website. The previous town hall meetings are there for you. We do have some great challenges that we're trying to work through. I believe many of you may know what they are. Those that don't, please watch one of the town hall meetings. We have another one coming up on September 14th, which will be a different format that will talk about the district's challenges, what we're doing, and specific challenges to that area. We're also doing a 6 series video, 6 or 7 videos now that we talk about very specific topics and do a question and answer session. It's available to everyone in the jurisdiction. We do a FaceTime live. It's also broadcasted on YouTube, Periscope, and Facebook Live. That's also happening on September the 14th. On the district's website, when you go to the very top of the district's website, it says it's fire season. If you click onto it, you come to this, what we call the splash page. All of the previous recorded events, even the one that we're doing here tonight, will live there. All the previous town halls, all the previous Facebook Lives, they're all available there for you. If you have a hard time getting there, if you go to the district's YouTube page, all of it's there also, and there's a lot of information on this page for you. This is Chief Albert, and I don't know why it says double L on the fire marshal. That's my bad, typo on my part. There's 1 L. But that's both of our phone numbers and our email address. We do want to be very accessible to you, and we want to be able to address any questions that you have. I'm going to stop my video here real quick and give anyone an opportunity to take a picture of that or write those numbers down. Again, that is both of our cell phones and our email address. And we want to be available to you, and the district's website is available for you there on the bottom. And so one thing I want to conclude before I give it back over to to President Oftedal, is that, look, this is a conversation starter, and I really cannot thank Chief Marcucci, Jambroni, and Meredith from OES for being here tonight to be able to help communicate this with you. We sincerely really want to work very closely and well with you within the Marsh Creek Morgan Territory area. I'm excited about the Marsh Creek Morgan Territory emergency response team, the community emergency response team, the SIR program, as I believe it's also going to be a good conduit for information flow, sharing information, community engagement, and programs that we haven't been doing as of yet. So to conclude, I really hope that you hear that we hear you. I hope that you see that we're trying to improve what it is that we do. And all of you that stayed on here through tonight, because it has been 2 hours, is that I appreciate you investing the time to communicate with us and continue to lean on us so we can better serve you. So thank you for being engaged. Again, Chief Marcucci, sincerely, Jamboroni. I know it's late for you being in Florida. And Meredith, thank you. And President Oftedal, that concludes our presentation. Oh, is there a question, Susannah?
There was that one question that we had at the beginning that we deferred to the end.
Yeah, and we can go to Q&A at this point once I give it back to President Oftedal. And actually, I have a note here too. Before we go to Q&A, just in general, and give it back to you. Director Young joined at 7:42, just for the good of the order. We are, for that reason, we had a quorum, and we will be taking minutes and reporting out at our next meeting that we did have a quorum as of 7:42. I know we reported out initially, we did not have a quorum, and this is an informational meeting only. There is obviously no action being taken here tonight, but the clerk of the board, Regina Rubier, has been taking minutes, and we will report out because we do have a quorum. Secondarily, in regards to that question, and we could address more. So there was a question, I didn't even know there was a letter for it yet, but I believe it's referencing to the county sales tax. There was a question about, is there an initiative for a county sales tax? How is it going to impact the fire district? And that was a great question. We as a fire district are right now seeking to understand, and how we have been told that in multiple formats that it is going to potentially help agencies that have had fire stations that have historically closed. We definitely meet that bill. But we are in the very early stages of seeking understanding. The fire board, staff, myself, we're seeking to understand what it means. And I would anticipate in the very near future that we as the fire board are going to have a conversation to figure out what it is and where we are. So to be very clear, sir, and whomever asked the question, is I'm not trying to dodge in any way. Is this is a newer concept and newer topic, but I will tell you that your fire chief and your fire district, we are looking at not only state initiatives, we're looking at local initiatives, we're looking at all kinds of alternatives to bring additional revenue into the district. And this is something that we have our eye on. But this didn't go, we were made aware of this, and it became official just within the last week or two. And so we're in the fact-finding phase. So please continue to monitor, watch the board, communicate with me if you would like. I'd be more than happy to keep you aware of where the fire board and the voice of the fire board is. But right now we are fact-finding to figure out what it could positively do for the fire district. And right now it's too close to call, but we're encouraged there may be an opportunity there. Hopefully that answers your question. Is there any more questions, Susannah, before I give it back to President Oftedal that you see?
I am seeing no more questions, and I'm not seeing any raised hands.
So in respect to time, what I may do is I'm going to defer it over to President Oftedal, and President Oftedal, maybe you can just do for the good of the order at the end to make sure we don't miss any, but I want to defer it back to you.
Okay. Just giving another look, Susannah, we are wrapping up here, and you did say that we have answered all of the questions that were put out there. Nobody else has their hands up that you can see?
Nope, we're good.
Okay. Perfect. I noticed on a previous slide there was an error, so I just wanted to let everybody know that the Facebook Live and the town hall will be on September 14th. I did notice that one of them, I believe, said Monday and the other one said Friday, but they are both being held on September 14th. The Facebook Live will be at 6 p.m. and the town hall will be at 7 p.m. And that town hall is for specifically addressing Byron and Knightson because of the size of the communities, we decided that we were going to join both of those together. But please feel free to join us on either of those events. Just a couple of items that I noted. Lorena Herrera, I did see, provided some comments on the warning system. I did see an announcement earlier this week, I believe, that they did change their number. If you received a call in the past, it was all zeros that would show up on your phone. And they have recently put out an announcement where a number is going to be popping up on your phone. So I know on my cell phone, I went and added into the contact that that's the emergency warning system. In the past, I never answered the number when it's come up because I figured it was a direct marketing call, and it's always gone to my voicemail. And later on, I was frustrated that I didn't answer the call. So I appreciate that they changed that. From the announcement, it shows that it's 925-655-0195. Once again, 925-655-0195. So I would highly recommend doing the same thing, adding that in as a contact, and maybe changing the alert tone on your phone so it's not a whatever you use as a standard ringtone on your phone. So there's a little bit of a variance that it would alert you that it's potentially time to get out. I do appreciate all of the information that Meredith did provide. I know that on an earlier call that I was on today, we did talk about evacuation warnings. One of the things that was brought up was, I know there is a lot of confusion everywhere with the terminology, and I know folks are working on that. But with that evacuation warning, one of the conversation pieces was that even though it's a warning, if you have family and friends that have some sort of level of disability, they're bedridden, maybe older adults, small children, animals, that warning might in your case be one of those maybe you should get out. There was a suggestion that that if a family member has that warning come through, that some folks have been given a directive to get out because it does take them a little bit longer to get out. So I appreciate Meredith. I appreciate you being on the call this evening with us. Chief Marcucci, Chief Cambroni, I appreciate you both being on the call with us and providing all the specific information. I know Sunshine Station been great partners. CAL FIRE have been great partners with us over the years, and we appreciate that Amador relationship that we have with you. I might offer off Director Joe Young an opportunity to speak for a moment. I did give Vice President Smith that opportunity, but Director Young is one of our elected directors. He's also the chair of our Finance Committee, which is a meeting that's hosted monthly and is open to the public to join. But Director Young, would you like to say a couple words?
Well, I'll just say that I'm very happy to see as many people here as there are. I've been to some other town halls and meetings in that area, and this is great response. I really appreciate it. I'm not going to drag it on. We're already running late, but thank you all for being here. And actually, I learned a few things tonight too, so I think it was a very good program.
Nice, thank you, Director Young, and thank you to our local community leaders, Susannah Thompson, Tamara Steiner. Thank you both for posing the question and questions and providing us a lot of those questions in advance so we could get the appropriate speakers here this evening and prep some of that material so we could get as many answers back to the community as possible. Just want to glance at my list just to make sure that I haven't missed anybody, but yeah, I second that I appreciate the large attendance by the Marsh Creek Morgan Territory residents this evening. That was huge. I know this will be posted on our YouTube site tomorrow, and I would encourage you to share this with your neighbors that may not have had the opportunity to get on with us this evening, and also sharing it with family and friends in the area, if you would. As always, Chief Helmick, thank you for being here this evening and all of your responses. Fire Marshal Hebert, definitely appreciate all the educational material that you provided and all the dialogue, all the back and forth in the chat feature. Please follow us if you're not already following us on whatever social media medium you utilize, Facebook, Twitter, We do have a YouTube channel, and there's a number of others. I know Fire Marshal Bear talked about Pulse Point. That is a great app to have to keep an eye on whether we're responding to a vegetation fire in your area. But the true reason that Pulse Point was put together was for cardiac arrest, and it was to get trained responders to help their neighbors. So please, if you're trained in CPR, please indicate that on the app. If you are in a public area, maybe a commercial area or outdoor area within roughly a 5-minute radius, you will be alerted if there's a cardiac arrest that comes in, and you would have the opportunity to respond and assist. And with our lack of resources, we really need community response. So please download that app. And if you haven't been trained in CPR, please take the opportunity to do that. I know it's challenging these days with the physical distancing orders, but I know they are doing some virtual training in different sites. So please take the opportunity to do CPR first aid. I'm happy to hear that this community emergency response team, specifically for Marsh Creek and Morgan Territory, is coming to us in the near future. And that being said, I think I'm going to close it out. It's close to 9:15. There's still a lot of folks that have hung in here with us, but definitely appreciate everyone being here this evening and supporting your local fire district. I know the fire chief provided his contact information along with the fire marshal. I'll give you my contact information. It's my first initial and last name, boftedal@eccfpd.org. So once again, that's boftedal@eccfpd.org. My cell phone number, 925-584-0592. Please, if you'd like to talk at any point, feel free to give me a call, send me a text message, send me an email. I do try to get back to folks as quick as I can. And it looked like Chief Helmick may have had his hand up for a second.
Yeah, no, I did. And just as a point of formality, again, because it's a little unique tonight because we do have a quorum and we do have a meeting. If you would allow, I'd like to please bring Regina back online to ensure that there's no more housekeeping items, because we need to close the meeting when you conclude to here in a moment. And as a point of for the good of the order, we normally have all the speakers hold after to debrief and also collect action items of things that we need to continue to work on, which we'll do here tonight. And to honor the Brown Act, we're going to need to have Director Young and Vice President Smith drop off this call and just have President Oftedal join that so we don't go into closed session and violate the Brown Act. So I thank you, gentlemen, for understanding that. And Regina, do you want to reinforce anything or anything else you'd like to add before President Oftedal concludes?
We are able to conclude. I have the minutes taken for the meeting this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, President Oftedal, for letting me do that.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. And Regina, just confirming, I'm sure you probably haven't received any minutes or any notes via email prior to this that we need to disclose?
There were no emailed public comments, President Oftedal.
Nice, perfect. Thank you so much. And once again, thank you for spending the evening with us. And please reach out to us if you have any additional questions, and continue to support your fire district so we can get you the much needed resources that we need. We definitely need the community support to find sustainable funding and improve our fire services. So thank you.